San Francisco's innovative recycling program is one of the first of its kind. Residents merely need to bring unsorted recyclables, food waste, and whatever remaining garbage out to their curb. Then, with a flick of a switch, the driver empties the can into the truck. The truck then returns to the large facility, where the recyclables are sorted on a mass assembly line. Despite such innovations in recycling and waste management, the San Francisco Bay Area is home to another type of recycler. A small group of recycling enthusiasts, salvagers, and professional dumpster divers who run low-tech community recycling centers and reuse yards.
I used to be a minister. I know what holiness is. And when I look in people's garbage cans, I don't see a lot of holiness.
My head hit the pillow at night. I didn't do anything bad all day. I mean, I did not exploit anything or anyone. And that was an incredibly new experience to me. It just was unlike anything I'd done before.
It's a strange business because you see all classes of people, from people who can't keep a roof over their heads to people who could keep a much better roof over their heads than they choose to do.
It's a really bizarre, tortured path for most of us. I mean, some of us just stumble into it. Some of us, I'm afraid, were born into it. I'm the son of a pack rat.
So I pulled out this dictionary. I remember standing there in the middle of all this garbage with garbage all around me, opening up the dictionary and finding the word disposal, because that I'd been ruminating about that and trying to figure it out. And I looked at it, and the first meaning was orderly placement. And I thought, looking around, what's orderly about this? This isn't disposal, this is something else. We had gone to the tipping areas, and we had looked at what was being dumped. And we saw so much valuable material being squashed by their bulldozers and destroyed.
Now in the big cities, it used to drive me crazy. You'd go to the local landfill and there'd be these giant tractors and they'd be running over like leaded glass windows. You'd be going, no, not that, stop. And they won't let you take anything out. You can bring something in, but even if you wanted to take something away, you couldn't. It was totally illegal for you to remove anything from the dump, from the municipal dumps. Well, the county dumps and the little smaller city dumps usually had nobody watching them, or if they did have them watching them, my favorite was like Eatonville, because they had this old guy and he was like, this is his dump. It's like, this is my dump, kid. But he was like 87. So he wasn't very fast. I was like 17. And my older brother was just a couple years older than that. And my favorite experience with him was somebody had unloaded all the seats out of like about a dozen buses, and they were old school buses, like the yellow ones, go pick up the rural kids. They were all leather seat covers. Well, we were both doing leather work, and I'm looking over the edge of this hill, and it's like 200 feet down the hill. There's like 3 months worth of leather just sitting on these seats, and all we have to do is just grab it, take the leather off, and get out of there. And the whole time, as I'm thinking, okay, let's get it. So we went home, got sharp pocket knives, and Jim went back to the dump, went running down the hill, and then meanwhile the keeper's coming running out. He's like, hey, you hippies, get out of there! And he's throwing bottles at us, trying to get us away from the seats. My brother and I are like slashing bus seats apart as fast as we can, and just like wham, 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 these giant rolls of leather, and I'm cutting them apart, and he's running up the hill and throwing them in the back of his truck, and the keeper's yelling and screaming at us, and people are laughing all over the place, like, oh, what's going on here? People were throwing stuff down the hill, and we're ducking, We don't want to hurt anybody, He throws a couple bottles at us and yells and gives me every name in the book. And it's like, hey, yell at me, but this stuff is valuable and I'm taking it, You got paid for it to get put here. You already got your money. If I don't take it away, it's going to rot. And it's going to rot real fast because it's leather. I could take it away. I could turn those bus seats into purses and belts and sandals and jackets and, fringed vests. I mean, we're talking embarrassingly, this is like very early 70s when those things were still commodities.
Dave Seabury and I actually went to a neighboring dump, and we added up, based on our knowledge, we actually added up about $7,000 worth of material by noon that people were throwing away. He and I just sat there and pulled it out, we could have sold this at a flea market or something for a total of $7,000. So when you talk about sending things to the landfill, to the dump, you're talking about sending value out of the community.
Right now you're paying to dump the material. So if you turn that into a viable product, we've saved landfill, we've saved materials, we've saved energy, we've created jobs. That's the kind of stuff that we need to get to, where it all becomes normal.
People don't really understand what they're throwing away. A lot of times people will die and they've collected stuff, but it's all in boxes, and they have an estate sale and some of the stuff is recognized. But then there's all that stuff that's left and doesn't sell at the garage sale or the estate sale. And the relatives say, well, we can't stay in town. We can't open these boxes up. We can't figure it out. So they just throw it all away. And in those boxes, sometimes there's some real treasures.
I found photographs from a Japanese internment camp one time. So, that stuff's out there as part of the historical record.
It's a different mindset. One of the biggest problems with garbage men is that they tend not to look at the garbage. That's not their job. Their job is to get the garbage picked up in the truck to the drop-off place, which is usually a transfer station or a dump. What's in the garbage doesn't matter to them any more than a FedEx driver knows what's in the packages in his truck. That's not his job. His job is to pick up the packages and take them somewhere. But if you're going to work in recycling, you have to have it in your heart that newspaper is different from magazines. Magazines are different from cardboard. Cardboard's different from clear bottles, which is different from brown bottles and green bottles.
Pick out your can, here comes the garbage man. In the morning, stick out your can, here comes the garbage man. In the evening, stick out your can, here comes the garbage man.
The origins of Golden Gate and Sunset are based essentially on recycling before recycling was a word. It used to be known as scavenging, and that's what they did. You look at the name of Sunset Scavenger and Golden Gate Disposal, which was previously the Scavengers Protective Association. Their primary focus was on salvaging materials from the waste stream. They would sort paper, traditional paper, bottles and cans, just like we do nowadays, but they also sorted food waste that used to go to the pig farmers, rags when there wasn't so many synthetic materials on the market, wools and cottons, which would go back into the rag business.
And we had mobile recycling centers, and we didn't even know that. But we scavenged. We're scavengers. We're not garbage men, we're scavengers. We scavenged through the waste, and we took out whatever we could sell. If you didn't sort, when you got to the dump, there was a member of the board of directors out there looking through your load, and if you found recyclables in there, you got fined for it, the whole crew. Very effective way.
When I was a kid in Yonkers, New York in the 1940s, we had a big flat garbage truck that had sides about 4 feet high. There was a guy up on the top, in the back. They threw the stuff over the top, and he sorted the stuff in the back of the garbage truck. The guys in San Francisco tell you the same thing, rags, bottles, and sacks.
Rags, bottles, metals, all the paper products. There was no plastic.
Buttons, bones, anything that could be salvaged and sold was. Very little was going into the landfill. Predecessors of today's garbage collection, where a guy stayed in the back of the truck and actually sorted the material that was brought up the 7 steps into the bed of the truck by the people on the ground usually in crews of 3.
We scavenged through that waste. 3 guys packed it up those 7 steps into heaven. Heaven is when you unloaded that sack off your back, and then the 4th guy would sort it.
To me, World War II, basically, America became the biggest power of the world. And the way you show you're rich is by throwing things away, by not cherishing the value of things. And I think that's kind of what went on in our country in the 40s, after the war, in the 50s. A lot of pent-up demand, a lot of people, guys been out, they've been fighting in the South Pacific for 5 years. They want to come home and buy a house and live and throw things away. There's an old Jack Benny show from the 50s, and some guy tells Jack Benny's so rich that he trades in his Rolls Royces when the ashtrays are full. You see, I mean, that's how you show you're rich, is by neglecting and ignoring things that normal people would think are of value.
Say, Tony, who collects and returns all the empty beer bottles in your house, you or Junior?
Empty beer bottles? Well, say, hasn't anybody told you about the new Anchor Glass one-way, no deposit, no return bottle?
Say, that's right. There's no need to save one-way bottles.
No deposit is required. You never have to return them to the store. Clean, clear, sparkling.
Beer that's brewery bright.
No deposits, no fuss, no empties to be returned to the store.
And when you've enjoyed the beer, you dispose of the empty bottle as you would any other food container.
You are the first and the last to use it.
Yes, and that's why the new sanitary Anchor Glass one-way, no deposit bottle is sweeping America.
Disposable bottles became in vogue, so to speak, and returnables weren't. So the whole infrastructure kind of collapsed around a societal change to one-way and disposable items.
As time went on, they kept introducing more and more and more plastic, where now instead of having 100% bottles, you got 40% glass bottles and 60% plastic because it's cheaper. And nobody gives a darn that when you throw it away, you're filling a hole in the ground worldwide. And all the holes in the ground are being filled by plastic. And 1,000 years from now, that plastic will all be in the ground.
More and more plastic bottles, you couldn't wash them, nobody wanted them after that. Disposable pens, one-use pens, disposable razors, plastic packaging of all sorts, which there wasn't really a market for.
More and more garbage became collected in dark plastic bags, making it impossible for the scavengers to identify or salvage any items. The collection trucks moved forward with technology. Although hydraulic compactors allowed for much more storage and efficiency, they destroyed all objects being thrown away.
That, in combination with the change in our society going to disposable products and synthetic materials, kind of dealt a death blow, essentially, to the old salvaging or scavenging that used to go on in the city.
In 1965, Scavengers Protective Association changed its name to Golden Gate Disposal. Not until April 1970 did the public demand a change in the country's wasteful habits.
And then there was a period of time when these hip kids would keep on trying to keep the recycling movement going, and I did everything I could to help them. They were on the right track. They just didn't know how to do it. They would get barrels, fill them with bottles, break all the bottles. Then when the barrel was full, 400 pounds, and nobody could move that barrel anymore.
First generation, as we used to call it, first generation center. Everything was done by hand. We had no forklift.
In 1973, the city of Berkeley began collecting newspaper at the curb, the nation's first curbside collection program.
If all of the recycling that is done in the United States were to stop tonight, in order to have the same amount of material to use tomorrow to make the beer cans and the soda cans and the glass bottles and all that kind of stuff, we would need 40% more energy. That's like 100 power plants, because the amount of saving of energy by recycling materials rather than making them from scratch is immense. Nobody anywhere has a gut level appreciation of what that energy conservation is by the recycling of materials. The thing that I don't understand is why don't we use that information to double the recycling? Because if you look in the garbage today, 85% of what's in the garbage is stuff, all of which can be recycled. The biggest single component of my personal trash is the plastic containers from Safeway. I buy pie at Safeway. I love pie. I could eat a pie a day. I'd get fat, but I eat probably a pie a week. I have hundreds of these plastic containers. It's a polyethylene material, but it's not the same material that goes in the soda bottle, and nobody wants them. What am I supposed to do with this thing? I put it in the trash right now. I've also made a necklace of them and worn them to conferences. And when the people from the plastic bottle industry gets up there and brag about what a great job they're doing, I wave my necklace.
There's no such thing as recycling of any plastic bags, even though they have a little can in front of the supermarkets, bring us all your plastic bags. Well, when I read an article in the paper, an ad, bring all your bags to Lucky Stores, it was late at night, I was tired. It was 6 o'clock, but the next day, I got a 2,000-pound bale of plastic, put it on the back of the truck, and with two of my gorillas, we backed up to the front door of Lucky Stores. And I was just about to dump it, and the manager ran out. I said, "What are you guys doing here?" I said, "I saw your ad in the paper. You wanted some bags. I thought I'd bring you some." Drop that off here. I'm calling the cops. If you don't stand back, buddy, when it hits the floor, it's going to break both of your frickin' legs. So anyway, in 30 seconds, we had 2 squad cars. And by that time, I already dumped it on the floor. And a cop is a stamp collector. He picks up our mail, takes the stamps off, says, "Joe, what's the problem?" I said, "I don't know, Sarge." So an ad in the paper, he wanted some bags. I thought I'd bring them to him. He looks at the manager, says, "Is this your ad?" He says, "Yeah, what'd you call us for? You wanted bags? You got them. We're busy on the beat." There never, ever was another ad in any newspaper about bags, because the first one that comes out, I'm dumping them over there. It's cheaper than going to the dump. But I'm still getting all the farmers markets with all their vegetables, and I still get all the excess food from food bank that can't be fed to humans, it's outdated. Pigeons, blackbirds, they all come down, sparrows. I've got a large number of pigs here now. Then I got chickens, peacocks, they all eat it. Cases of strawberries, tomatoes. They don't eat potatoes unless you cook them, but we get all the vegetables, all the lettuces. They eat that up like it's no tomorrow.
At a recycling center, we go through a fair amount of porn, okay? I conduct children's classes, high school classes, tours of the Hank Yard, and one of the things I always do if I have a tour that day is I go through our magazine section and our mixed paper sections. We have bins where we keep all this, and I censor out all the porn because the kids love to poke around and see what's in there. There's all kinds of stuff to read and everything, and I just want to make sure we keep things clean. But one day, we found a book. It was one of these more specialized fetish magazines, and it was Foot Fancier's Monthly or something like that. And it was basically a slick magazine with full-color photos of beautiful young women, basically their legs and their feet, and they'd have these high-heeled shoes on, and whatever, there'd be like toe cleavage or what have you. Okay, so just page after page after page. Big deal. I mean, we've seen everything. I wouldn't even notice it, except opened up the thing and looked like someone had taken an X-Acto blade and carefully, very carefully and lovingly cut out every single picture of every single foot on every single page. I mean, they went around the toes and everything. So that there all it was a magazine with foot-shaped holes in it. We were just imagining someone having these feet like glued all over their wall. What motivates you to be here anyway? This is kind of dirty, hard work, bad weather, crackheads and dope fiends everywhere that you're dealing with. Just not really wonderful conditions. Why do you do this day in, day out?
It's outdoor work. Much of it is 19th century type work, for one thing. And then, on the other hand, a lot of it is even 21st century work.
I like being outside. I like being busy with my body rather than sitting at a desk, which is what I'd done mostly before.
I worked for a nasty corporation for a long time, and I did nothing but grub money and do anything for money and whatever. And you didn't have that good feeling at the end of the day.
The darker, the slimier, the harder to stand up, the more obstacles, the more satisfying the account is to recycle to me.
Charlie Lamar was just this barefoot, long-haired old hippie guy who was just kind of sitting there, and he was very strange. He's impervious to anything. He goes out on the truck every day, schleps a lot of heavy stuff, directs our truck drivers, and does a pretty good job about it. And goes into, like, for instance, our truck program where we take out bottles from different bars in the Castro and restaurants, and he goes in there without any kind of safety protection whatsoever and schleps big barrels of broken glass, never gets a scratch. And with all the filth passing through him also, he never gets sick or anything. We believe he's got every known antibody that ever existed. They're all in his body all at once, and nothing can get him because he just doesn't get sick. It's just amazing. Where any of us, I'll be wearing gloves and everything, and I'll slice myself to ribbons, and I'll get it infected like the next day after that. Never happens to him. It's amazing, but that's why he's a neighborhood treasure.
Curbside recyclers like me, and each one of my trucks divert as much as, say, a recycling center does. And actually, if you were to look at a spreadsheet, each one of my trucks with its driver may cost as much as a recycling center does.
If everybody can have this stuff picked up at their house, why will people continue to put it in their car and schlep it out? I have no idea. There was a lot of interesting discussion in the early days of this thing about whether people who drank a lot would put their bottles out in an open-topped container, because then their neighbors could see how much they drank. You put it in a garbage can, you can bury them sort of down inside, you see. I don't think anybody ever did any science on that.
That's the role that nonprofit recyclers have, is to figure out what isn't happening and try to get it to happen in a small pilot project way. And then the corporate recyclers will follow when it becomes politically necessary for them to do so.
As the need for community recycling centers reduced, veteran recyclers opened up salvage and reuse yards, targeting different materials.
Space in the city is so tight, and rental space for storage is so tight, nobody can afford to hang on to these materials. So you get contractors who are doing a job, they're pulling out, say, windows that are brand new. You know, somebody bought the building, no, I don't want those windows, I want other windows. So they'll take those windows out, put the new window in. What do they do with the last set of windows? They're still perfectly good, or they could hang on to them for another job. And historically, that's what happened. But because storage space is so expensive, they can't afford, the space is more expensive than the windows are, so they dump them. So what we do is we step in and act as a catch-all for those kinds of materials. And we just kind of an orphanage, if you will. We take all the orphan materials and find homes for them.
We've transformed this place the past 10 years from a full toxic waste, brown lands, depressing urban decay lot to a vaguely less depressing, a bit more uplifting and creative urban decay lot, filled with all kinds of goodies that would have been discarded and thrown in landfill over these past few years.
I went over there and I was just looking at his yard, and I just saw all this wood and plywood and stuff there, and it literally occurred to me you can build a house if you wanted to from the material that's just sitting there at this debris box company. So, and a good house, not something that looks like little Abner or anything, you know, but and so it occurred to me, why don't we just salvage these materials, you know? And it was a bold statement of the obvious, as we joke, and it turned out once I started looking around, Urbanor had already been doing that for about 15 years.
One person wanted to just rent the place out for raves and grow pot hydroponically. That was me. Oh well.
You will find a Gothic pulpit. You will certainly find unlimited pedestal sinks. You will find cast iron chandeliers 12 feet by 4 feet that hang from maybe 8 or 10 foot chain system for your living room, if that's what you require. We get phone calls and we go out where it is by appointment.
Hey Matthew, the folks at UC ask if we want those kind of metal dividers between bathroom stalls.
We get this stuff from all over, pretty much San Francisco, but if anybody calls up and wants to give us gold bullion, we will go to other areas.
Like where? How far have you gone?
Oh,
For gold bullion.
for gold bullion, we've gone down to San Jose. The people at Building Resources seem to be able to market it, so no matter what kind of rotten garbage comes from this particular place, they're selling it because people just have to have it.
Because it's French?
I suppose. But anyways, it's French rot as opposed to any other kind of rot, and this is highly marketable.
Try to imagine a Goodwill run by people who are really nuts and like big, heavy objects and like to do artistic things with them at the same time instead of just simply selling them. I guess that's how you would describe it. To a person who's never been there, I would describe the manager and who his two favorite architects are. Just to give you an idea of the flavor of the place. Matthew's two favorite architects are Frank Lloyd Wright and Dr. Seuss. And the place looks like it. It looks like a combination of Frank Lloyd Wright and Dr. Seuss, with maybe a little, some Salvador Dali thrown in. He's the man. He's synonymous with Building Resources. And I don't think, I'm not sure how we could go on if we did not have him.
Urban ore, Mary Lou, my wife, calls it a sociology experiment that worked.
By the time I came on board Urban Ore, all the good things had been cherry picked. They weren't getting antiques through the dump anymore because the word got out in the community to go to Urban Ore first. So if you were to look at the Berkeley waste stream, again discard supply, you would notice that it's a dearth of material. If you go to any other community or most other communities, there's lots of things that's very reusable. Recycling really is kind of a disposal option, you know. But if you want to make money, if you want to self-sustain an operation, reuse is the way to do it.
Here's where I'm still really out of step with a lot of recyclers. Most recyclers accept the industry terminology that says disposal equals landfilling.
There's not much of value in newer appliances. You know, our appliances are designed to be single-use objects. I literally dismantled a washing machine. I was just bored one day, a dishwasher, and I think I literally found about 45 cents worth of material in that whole thing.
I mean, particularly when you're doing recycling and particularly when you're doing reuse, the quality of the goods really shows up. You know, stuff that's really cheaply put together just doesn't recycle. It doesn't. You can't reuse it over again. I mean, like particle board is our nemesis. You know, everything's now made out of particle board, and particle board's a dead end. Particle board can't be reused. The glue that they use on it won't go back together again. So you can't like recycle it, grind it back down, and make more particle board, even though it's already particulate. What's holding it together won't rebond.
We advise people all the time, don't buy particle board furniture because it's brittle, falls apart. You got screws into this particle board, the stuff chips away, and you can't repair it. There's nothing much you can do once it happens.
No, it's bad stuff. And it's also off-gassing formaldehyde and other fumes all the time too, so it's not good for your health.
They really are very thoughtful in the way that they engineer it so that it can all go into a box and then you can assemble it. But once you've assembled it and then you start moving it and it goes into regular use, that's when the stresses start. And the stresses over time start pulling the things apart. And that's what I mean about being over-engineered and underbuilt. They're just not built to last.
Whereas plywood cabinets, which are more expensive, you can take them out of a kitchen, put them on a truck, take them to the reuse center, offload them, put them on a pallet, put them back on another truck, ship them back to somebody else's house, put them back in the kitchen, and do that 2-3 times to them, and they're fine. In the meantime, we just try to keep as many of the good ones, you know, in recirculation, so we don't have to make more of the bad ones.
As the next generation of recycling professionals finds itself working for either municipalities or large hauling companies, often sitting behind a desk, this generation of professionals ultimately faces extinction.
We need those younger folks, but I don't know how the transition's going to work.
The visionaries, the young hopeful people, that's somewhat dried up. One of the things that's discouraging to me is that I don't see that the young people, I think the young people who want to live that kind of a life or who are interested, not interested in recycling anymore. They're more interested in wilderness preservation, animal species, that kind of stuff.
When you're working in a place like this, which is always underfunded and always under the gun, and there's not enough of us, and there's too much stuff out there, you feel like Sisyphus. And you push that rock up there, and boom, it goes right down the other side, and you got to get up in the morning and do it all over again.
What's going to solve the problem is if we can normalize the concept that reuse is okay, that it's not okay to bury the stuff in a landfill, that it's okay to go down there and get those bus seats and put them back to use and make people happy and make jobs out of it, that it's okay to produce products from it, that it's okay to use those products.
What's the name of the actor who played Opie's father?
Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith played the guy who owned the junkyard, and he had 2 or 3 supporting casts, and he parted out cars and sold stuff all around the world. But his main trip was to build this rocket ship that would, instead of taking off at fantastic speeds, would just lift off very slowly and slowly build speed, and then eventually get into orbit. And they were going to go around and collect all the space junk that was in orbit and bring it back to Earth and recycle it, because he was a junk dealer and nobody was out there collecting all the junk in orbit. So I just thought, there's no way I'm building a rocket ship, but I like boats, so you could sort of take that idea and make it a slow-moving boat, running around, picking up scrap and processing it. That's where I got it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it was a great show.
And the pulpit certainly was one of my favorite things. I preached from the pulpit. I said, everything that I am saying is false, which is as near as I can get to the truth.